But very good to have you all in this session on capacity building for nature-based enterprises and public procurers wanting to procure some NBS. My name is Elsa Durio. I work for ECLA. We're a global network of cities working on sustainability matters. And I'll be guiding you through today's program, a bit of an intro and introducing our speakers as well. We've got two experts today who will be able to talk us through and give us some hopefully very helpful insights on the topic. So let me start by sharing my screen. It was a small introduction to the topic of NBS procurement and key definitions. Then we'll have an interactive FAQ with our two speakers. And then we'll be sharing some resources for procurers and nature-based enterprises. So first of all, a quick introduction to NBS procurement and key definitions. I hope you can see my slides properly now. If not, please let me know. You should be on part one, introduction to and talk us through what we're going through then. So the first thing is definition of nature-based solutions. I'm pretty sure after 2 days of summit, you're all very familiar with what we're talking about. But we're talking about solutions that are inspired and supported by nature, which are cost-effective and provide environmental, social, and economic benefits to help build resilience. So they are very much alternative to traditional infrastructure or urban development or rural development methodologies, which involve the use of nature-based components. Moving down to the role of public authorities and why it's quite key for public authorities to get involved in the delivery of NBS. So in Europe alone, there are 80,000 cities and towns in the EU. They're responsible for 70% of EU legislation, a third of public spending, 2/3 of public investment, and the provision of services for their citizens and businesses across a really wide range of sectors. So that gives them a really strong leverage power and a lot of spending power to try and influence the market, and notably the market for nature-based solutions. So there is a really strong case for them to get involved in the delivery of nature-based solutions. Now, when we talk about the public market for nature-based solutions, I think it's quite key to remember that, or to be informed that there are different ways in way nature-based solutions can be included within public tenders. The first one, which is very common, is nature-based included as the main subject matter of a public contract. And that is, we have a public authority that decides to procure a nature-based solution. That's the main intention. So for example, the authority says, we need a green roof or we need a new green corridor, and they make a contract for that. What that means is that in terms of procuring it, they need to find a supplier that can deliver that with the right skills for the right price and knows what they're doing. So that's the kind of question we're asking with the procurement exercise in that case. The second case we have is where nature-based solutions are integrated within a broader public infrastructure project. So for example, we have a public authority that's trying to deliver a new urban development master plan or a new public building. And as part of that, they start to think, how can we green and how can we make the project more sustainable? And then they start to think about nature-based solutions. And so nature-based solution will only be one element of a public tender. And it means that a nature-based company that wants to work on that tender probably needs to join forces with other companies that can deliver the rest of the tender. And I think that's also when a lot of the issues come forward often. Just be moving down to a few more key definitions before we move down to our Q&A. And the first one is the definition of nature-based enterprise, which I think is quite key. I mean, I'm sure a lot of you are representing nature-based enterprises today. And we see them, and as the connecting nature definition, as companies that use nature as a core element of their product, service, or offering. So nature may be used directly by growing, harnessing, harvesting, or restoring natural resources in a sustainable way, or indirectly by contributing to the planning, delivery, or stewardship of sustainable nature-based solutions. So the very strong difference between nature-based enterprises and maybe conventional landscape architecture is also a focus on sustainability. So the sustainability of the nature-based solutions being implemented, and also the awareness that of nature-based solutions, which somehow we find a lack of definition in the market. Some companies might be doing NBS and not knowing they are nature-based enterprises, which can cause some confusion at the time of bidding for public tenders. Now, very briefly, public buyers, who are they? When we talk about public buyers, we talk about organizations identified in the EU procurement directives. And for example, that could be government departments, local authorities, or associations run at least by 50% by public bodies, and so on. Then 3 other key definitions, which will be helpful for our discussion. There is some confusion sometimes between the idea of procuring NBS and getting involved in procedures such as green public procurement. So green public procurement just refers to the fact of getting involved in a public tender and for the public authority to try and purchase environmentally friendly goods and services and work. So instead of just looking at the lowest price, they'll be trying to look at the environmental gains that it can be made from their purchase. And so when we look at NBS, for example, I mean, the very fact of procuring NBS instead of a conventional grey infrastructure solution is by definition green public procurement. But green public procurement also very much refers to the process of, once you're procuring NBS, how do you ensure that your NBS is greener than green and more environmentally friendly? We're in a similar discussion when we talk about sustainable procurement. It's public buyers looking at integrating sustainability aspects within their purchases through a process. So it's very much a process. And then we're looking at broader sustainability aspects, so not only environment but also social goals and economic goals within public purchases. Right, I've sent you everything, Ben. I think we'll just move down pretty quickly still to make sure we're on time and we can still have the discussion we're hoping to have. So we'll skip a few of the questions that were planned, but what we can go for is introducing our speakers. So I'll just talk you through the way the session is going to be run now. We will have Hans Müller representing Helix Plansen, NBE that's been working quite a lot on public tenders and successful in doing so, who will be answering some questions on how they're dealing with issues when bidding for public tenders for NBS. And echoing this, we'll have Aline Stolpe-Meyer from the municipality of Frederiksberg answering some questions in a similar style about what their best practice is, the city's best practice is when procuring NBS. And the way we'll do this is through an interactive polling system, hopefully, if that works, through which you'll be able to choose which questions you want to see answered about NBS. Are we good, Ben? That's looking great.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lene. And if Ben is not able to get my presentation on, I can try myself if you want that. Yeah. Well, I'm Lene, and I'm from the municipality of Frederiksberg, which is situated in the middle of the capital of Denmark. And I work with climate adaptation, and my focus area is innovation projects, where I evaluate all our solution and measure on effects and so on. And today I was asked to talk about public-private innovation and procurement. And we have had some experience for the last 5 years. Is it working, Ben?
You'll be able to see your presentation screen now.
Yeah. So
you just need to tell me to advance slide, okay?
Next slide, please. Yeah. And because of Frederiksberg is a very densely populated municipality and very small, in fact, only 8 square kilometers, we have not that much space to handle our rainwater. And this was actually 10 years ago where we have a major cloudburst. And as you can see, the people there are not that happy about the situation. So what we try to do is work together with the private companies to develop a new solution that we can use at Frederiksberg when considering stormwater management. Next slide, please. There are several different ways to do so. And the easiest one is just to develop together with the private companies with no contract, just asking them if they have any ideas and telling them about, for our case, our demands for the product. And in this way, we actually, if you look at the right side of the pictures, on the top, we developed a crash barrier / tree holding pole / watering system together with a private company. And this is so that we can water our trees through the system. And this was made just with co-development between the two parties and no contract. And we found the solution very fine, so we bought it afterwards. The same as the other picture, which is a permeable tile, where we are able to plant grass in, so that we can, at parking area, step out on that instead of in the bed. This was also just a co-development with a private company. So this is one way, but the other way that another way we did this public-private innovation was in existing projects, able to get a contract with the private part in innovation of a new solution. For example, a magazine that is able to lay quite high underneath the surface. That does not exist on the market yet. We are trying to develop that. And in this case, we have a existing cloudburst management project where we have the funding to do this. And the reason why we want this contract is that we want to buy the solution afterwards without procurement. And when we have this public-private innovation contract, we can do that. Otherwise, they would be maybe incompetent for procurement or not win the procurement afterwards. So this is a way to make sure that we can actually buy that product afterwards. Next slide, please. The last way that we have tried is the innovation partnership, which is a rather big tender where we went into a market dialogue with a lot of different players, invited them to talk to us about new solution for cloudburst management. And this went very well, and we made a tender where we described what we needed, and then everyone had a bid for their ideas, and we went into collaboration with 2 consortiums and co-develop some very nice solution with these 2 consortiums. And the beauty about this is that we can actually try it out, we can test it within the partnership, and we can buy it afterwards within the partnership in a framework agreement, so that we are not able, or so that we are able to buy it without further procurement. And also the fact that the innovation is not stopping with the solution now. When we are trying it for the 3rd or 4th time, they still innovate on these solutions. Next slide, please. And what you see here is actually not much, just a nice tree and some flowers, but underneath this solution that you saw on the other side, the pictures, is actually that the tree is getting watered from the road, and there is a basin underneath the tree, and so the tree actually get all the water that it needs first, and then afterwards it goes to another magazine where we can take up water to water other trees, or use it for spreading out on the pavement on warm days, or just let it to the sewage when the sewage is ready after a heavy rainfall. That was just a little about our experience with the different types of innovation, and this might as well be NBS. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this, Lene. Whilst Lene was speaking, so I think we've sorted the slider thing, posted the code within the chat. If you go there, you'll be able to vote on questions which you'd like Lene to answer. So from the public procurer's perspective, what are the key issues, key challenges you're facing? Choose 1 or 2 or 3, which you'd like Lene to answer. So thank you so much for that. And we can now move on to a quick introduction from Hans, who will be telling us a bit more about their work before we move to the Q&A.
Thank you, Elsa. Hello, everyone. My name is Hans. I'm a horticulturist working in a plant nursery, owning a plant nursery, 3rd generation, and we have different locations. So we are part of the suppliers as an SME with a strong green plant background. Next slide, please, Ben. As you can see here, we have different locations growing traditional outdoor plants, ground cover plants, lavender plants, also some heather plants. We're still quite strong in the traditional plant market. Next slide. For the last 10 years, we were involved in quite a few research programs, international EU research programs, but also national research programs, and developed different systems where we can green facades with different techniques and different materials. So we consider ourselves being a nature-based enterprise delivering or specialized on vertical greens, such as green facades, but also green noise barriers, and also mobile green furniture, kind of, such as the mobile green living room, but also green elements for public spaces, which have to be mobile because of different uses of these spaces. Next slide, please. On the left-hand side of the left picture, you see our first tram stop, bus stop, where we put green on it. And on the right slide, this is a parking garage where we put planters on different levels. And part of the contract is that we guarantee that in 3 years' time, this parking garage will be fully covered with climbers, will be fully green with about 2,000 square meters. Next slide, Ben. Thank you. So this is what we deliver with one branch of our company, where the 4th generation is already on board. Our son Jonathan, he is an architect. He is kind of the connection between the building part and the green roots we have as a company. And as you see, we are very much specialized on vertical green. This is quite a new market, and I would like to make a statement at the end of my introduction. I heard of Mr. Kevin Can from Singapore saying at a conference, the success of greening, of vertical green, is very simple. Success is all about maintenance. And I'm looking forward to the questions and the discussions. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this, Hans. Just for everyone to be aware, you're also now able to vote on the questions that Hans will be able to target in the second part of the Q&A. So please go back to Slido and take a look at that. In the meantime, I will perhaps just move on to the Q&A from the responses, the poll responses we've had online. Of course, if you've got any direct questions for one of our speakers, please feel free to ask directly in the chat, and then we can accommodate those as well on top of the ones selected through Slido. So the question that's overwhelmingly taken the attention of the audience, Lene, we can get back to you with the first question for public procurers, is how can I build the case for procuring nature-based solutions instead of traditional infrastructure solutions? And yeah, I'm wondering whether you'd be able to share some thoughts on that, Lene.
I think that if a municipality is green thinking, then it would be natural to take a nature-based solution in. And we at Frederiksberg definitely do. In every project that we think about, we think about that. So, and we also have research projects in that department. We have everything. So I guess that if you have a good idea, it's just let the public know that you are there and what you have of ideas and try to get into a project in that way.
In terms of concretely building the case, would you perhaps be able to share any examples? For example, what was the tipping point between deciding that there was more value in delivering a nature-based inspired drainage solution in Frederiksberg rather than a hard infrastructure solution?
In Frederiksberg, we have a vision that we want to not build as much concrete, gray drainage, but rather have the water transport, for example, on the ground, on the top of the surface, and use as lot of water as possible for watering trees, for example, or green walls, or whenever we can use it, recycle the water, we would do that. So it's just a matter of, and of course we always have to be sure that the price for that is not exceeding what it would be for a gray drainage. But actually, all the time when we have done this, it's been in favor of the nature-based, and also because many of the nature-based give extra value, and I think that's also a part that you have to hit on when you sell yourself. That it's extra value, that it has multiple functions. For example, a schoolyard that would be much better for the children to play at or learn by, and so on.
Very good. That's very good insights. I'm thinking if anyone's got any more questions to jump back on based on that information, please post them in the chat. Otherwise, we'll get back to you in a few minutes. Maybe Lene with another question to build on those topics. I'm thinking notably in terms of the cost element that you just mentioned. That's also one that attracted quite a lot of attention from the audience, the idea of funding the NBS solution. So we'll get back to you on this one in a few minutes. Otherwise, maybe we can move on straight to Hans, and I'll start with the first question for you that came from Slido, and the overwhelming winner of the Slido competition is: how do you demonstrate the value of your nature-based solutions to public procurers?
At the end of the day, the value, the well-known value are the aesthetic or biophilic design aesthetics of green. But we believe that the ecosystem services delivered by nature-based solutions has the highest focus. Even no one really can evaluate in money-wise or measures all the details, and that is from my point of view one of the biggest challenges at the moment. It's well known that green in cities does good for people, that's good for the environment. But and because of that, nature-based solutions are requested by through public tenders, through the municipalities. But we should come to a stage, in my opinion, where we can really value that, measure it, and then it gets even more concrete. Because at the moment, of course, price is always a big issue, and the tenders, they describe what needs to be built, and from the beginning, there's no money for maintenance most of the times. But at the end of the day, through maintenance, we all secure the ecosystem services, because if plants don't grow well, if they're not lush, if they don't evaporate, they would not bring the effect that we really ask for. So coming back to the question, yes, we have lots of tenders. Yes, we have lots of paperwork to fill out, but most of the time we feel that we don't really meet the point, because maintenance is not well described in the tenders, etc., etc. So yes, there's a high demand on nature-based solutions, but still a long way to go, really, to work out how it needs to be done on the long run, that it's really delivering the ecosystem services that everyone wants to have.
I think that's very interesting. I mean, my question, jumping back on that, who would tend to be your competitors on those tenders? So what kind of suppliers are you competing with? And when you get a tender, do people get it that don't do maintenance? Is it a low-cost thing where companies that are more traditional landscape architecture companies get the tenders because they don't need to do the maintenance? How do you deal with that, and what is it?
Of course, I can talk about the German landscaping industry. They most of the time, the companies, they do a great job, but I would say not every company already understood what's requested when nature-based solution is asked for in tenders. So there are traditional solutions which fit, I would say, 80% of the need. But if you're talking about biodiversity, for example, you might need different plants. You can describe the type of plants in the tenders, but the tenders we get, most of the time, there is no specification about different wildflowers, for example. So the landscaping industry, they do a great job, and they do know what they're building. But I fear that most of them, they don't really understand yet what's requested from the municipalities. A big threat, of course, are the main contractors. If you have in a big tender, for example, we are not building people, we are plant people, and we know how to build a green wall. We are not interested in building a facade. So if you have, as a municipality, if you have a big tender building a parking garage and you want to have one contractor, we would be in a situation where we have to offer our what we can supply to a main contractor, and his first interest is to buy in cheap products, or he'll go on the price. He's not interested in the results, and then the project very often falls back to the old scheme, to what was 10 years, how it was built 10, 20, 30 years ago, and that makes it difficult for us to really get through to the people who spend the money. We have success stories, but then in these success stories, we were able to talk to them directly to the investor, and he wanted to have a green garage. That is the case in the Cologne project. He told us, he came and visited us and understood what we can deliver, and he said, look, it's so important that this building is green. We cannot allow that this fails. And because of that, we got the direct contact with him.
Thanks so much for that, Hans. We've got a couple of questions for you in the chat. We'll get back to those later. But in the meantime, I think we can jump on those points and maybe have Lene's perspective on a few of those, jumping back from another of the Slido questions that came up.
Can I just add for what Hans
Of course,
said?
yeah, please do.
That actually, I think you're quite right, Hans, that the problem is actually the tenders. The tenders are not well described, and the municipalities are struggling right now in trying to how they can actually adapt those tenders, because often we also had the feeling that we did not get what we want, and that's because we described it wrong in the tender. So often what you say is that the cheapest one gets the tender or the project, and that's right. So we are actually very focused on trying to make these tenders written in a way that we actually get what we want. And that is what you say, Hans. We really like the green, and we want our biodiversity and so on. But sometimes it's just a matter of those tenders not being written well enough.
That's very interesting. I mean, I think the quick question is perhaps how do you do that, and how do you try to write those tenders better to attract the right kind of suppliers and the right answers? Yeah, that's exactly this question that came up. So great if you can answer it now.
Yeah,
Lene,
well, I can, because actually when I can go back to the innovation partnership, when we made that tender, we wrote the tender and we had a market dialogue where everybody read the tender, and half of them raised their hands and told them, what you're telling us that you want and what's written in the tender is not the same. You won't get it because you have all these kind of restrictions, and we are not able to deliver what we think are the new and innovative solution in the way that you wrote the tender. So the beauty about the innovation partnership was actually that you were able to rewrite the tender several times, having the market dialogue, rewriting the tender, putting it out in the market again, and have them come in with comments, rewriting the tender again. And then we decided to move on with the 5 companies and having a dialogue with them about the solutions. And after that, again, rewriting the tender. And in that way, it actually it came through with a really good tender. And I know, of course, this is not possible except you have a real large project. This is not for a little product, but if you can somehow get into a dialogue with the market, that would be really helpful.
I think that's very interesting for everyone to hear. So an iterative process of communication with suppliers, even within the drafting stage and the writing stage of the tender. I'm sure there are costs associated with that as well, and perhaps time constraints as well, or it will take more time, but it seems like it's a very, very valuable thing for cities to do in order to learn. And cities probably need to learn how to procure NBS better. And if you do it once, you'll be able to learn from those insights and use those into your next tender. So I think it's a very good message if there are any public procurers or cities in the audience. So yeah, thank you for that. I think we'll get back to the question of funding in a minute, Lene, because that keeps coming back, and that probably will be our next question for you. But in order to not let Hans not speaking for too long, we can jump to a question from the audience that came from Alice Rail, who's asking you, Hans, whether you're seeing a trend towards more and more cities including NBS within their public tenders. Is that the case? Is NBS referenced explicitly? And is there a really strong drive for innovation from public procurers on that side? What are you seeing compared to, say, 10 years ago?
I can say in Germany, at the moment, everyone knows what a nature-based, what green infrastructure is, and it seems like everyone is learning what nature-based solutions are at the moment. it's a matter of the wording. What does that mean in the German language? If you translate it into German, it's awful. It's just awful. So hopefully we can work with nature-based solution with that wording. Yes, there's an increasing demand, but that's what we just talked about. There's also a big misunderstanding, because most of the industry understands nature-based solution as, of course, we can do that, we can deliver that, we're building green. But what is behind what I said before, the ecosystem services, that there's no focus on that so far. Maybe I can have the connection to what you said, Lene, just a couple of minutes ago. I don't want to make the tender issue too complicated, but I'm very sure in a couple of years you will, as a municipality, you will write down what you expect, the type of ecosystem services you expect from the NBS, and the company who can deliver that will get the contract, and will do the maintenance and prove that what you as a municipality what you expect and where you spend your money on, that you get that. And until then, until we really can evaluate what green or what the ecosystem services are in detail, I think it's very, very important that you go into a dialogue, as you just said, Lene, that you don't focus on pumps and pipes and whatsoever, because in tenders you find all the different specifications of pumps and whatsoever. But the point is, you want to have something that is delivered by green, and this is not covered in words yet.
Yeah, that's very interesting points. I mean, that comes back to the definitions I provided at the very start when we start talking about sustainable public procurement and green public procurement. There's a lot of tools being developed as well through the European Commissions on the idea of better wording of tenders, how to do that, and also how to engage with suppliers to talk about sustainability matters. So if there's any public authorities within the audience, I'll be sharing some resources at the end, but I think that's also very worthwhile investing time and effort learning more about those tools for communicating between suppliers and cities, and the practical tools to involve more sustainable and environmental consideration within tenders, notably NBS. So yeah, worth having a look at for everyone. Maybe I'll jump straight back to you, Lene, building back to the question of funding for NBS. And I think that's quite something that sticks out. You were saying earlier that in your experience, NBS solutions have not necessarily been more expensive than traditional solutions, but maybe you had some issues at the start making the financial case for NBS. How do you deal with that, and where do you find funding for NBS?
That this is very different from municipality to municipality or other public companies or organization. But in our case, we have the citizens pay a tax for the water, and this money comes back and paying for the water management, and in the way that we do it, we collaborate very much with our utility company and use that money, and then we combine it with the tax money from the municipality tax money, and those money goes often to the green part of the project. So we actually have a water tax money that pays for the pumps or the hydraulic installations. And then we have the municipality tax money that pays for trees and surface and so on. And in that case, I think that that is good for the NBS, because then you can actually combine those and get that more value, as Hans talked about, that we're not able to actually put a money sign on yet, but that we all want. And And in this for the municipality, we try to put it together with everything that goes. For example, renovation of schoolyards, parks, playgrounds, whatever we can get, because there are a lot of tax money in those projects. So I think it's actually a matter of finding the right projects, and there will also be room for the green solutions or the NBC solutions.
That's very interesting. So from what you're saying, it sounds like you're very much integrating NBS within existing projects in order to get funding, and not necessarily going for, oh, we have a building, let's just procure a green roof for it. You're just working on bigger projects and looking to integrate NBS within it to be able to tap into this integrated funding.
Yeah,
so
right? That we actually give this synergy, this that multiple functionals of the project. For example, what I said as a schoolyard, where they, if the tax money pay for the digging down of a basin, for example, the money that the schoolyard would need for example, taking out all the asphalt and plant trees and a nice schoolyard instead, paid by the water tax money. So they can use the money for a green roof or a green wall or trees or rain gardens or whatever they want or playground. And actually the kids love that they can follow the water and see how it goes and how far in the sewage the water stands and so on. So we kind of make a larger project out of it.
That's very interesting. And maybe that brings me to a question for Hans then. When this happens and when NBS projects are maybe not clearly labeled as NBS or integrated within wider projects, how do you find them? Where do you find public tenders for NBS that you can bid to, Hans?
Thank you, Elsa. At the moment, it's interesting. They find us. The market is, especially the vertical green market, is so young. I wouldn't call it a market yet. It's just starting. So there are a few companies, only a few companies in Germany delivering that. So they find us, but with other NBS areas like big parks, big projects, etc., there are data available. There are companies who offer the service to deliver data and to deliver actual public tenders that are ready to be filled out. So there is a kind of an infrastructure on the whole market, but especially with vertical green, the architects, they come directly to us or the municipalities.
Very interesting.
Can I comment on that, Elsa?
Yeah, please.
You're quite right, Hans, because we often also go directly to the producer that we want to work together with. But also, I've seen during the last couple of years that a lot of producers themselves are very active. For example, looking through the municipalities' web page when there has been a political decided that a park should be renovated, or a new parking lot with a parking house with the green wall, for example. So they just spot and then they come to us and say, well, we've seen that you're about to do, could we get in touch? And that's very nice, because then we get a directly contact, as you said, Hans.
Thank you so much for that, both. We have about one more question for each of you, and then we can wrap it up. We have a few minutes for each question, but I think jumping on those points, it's a question that came from the audience as well for you, Hans. And in terms of the dialogue and this relationship between the public buyer and the company supplying NBS seems to be quite important. We have a question asking us about when there is a design competition sometimes being launched by a public authority, and so there's a relationship being created there, and your company might win the design competition. You might be working with architects on it and it's successful, but then the local authority then decides to go to another company to actually deliver the solution that you might have won the competition with. How do you deal with that? Is that something you encounter? And how do you deal with that? I think it's really a question of the relationship between cities and suppliers. That
we don't tend to design. We don't design buildings, but I want to put it the other way around. A lot of architects, most of the architects, when they design a new building, they design it with a green roof or a green facade or both. And then if we get involved, we give our input. And at the end of the day, it's like in sport. You win and you lose. It's part of the game. So you never have a guarantee if you give your input. We do it to a certain level. If we deliver detailed plans, etc., we charge for that. But I think it's important to a certain level that the municipalities are free to decide because of market reasons. We don't expect that because we are getting in touch quite early that we get the order at the end of the day. As I said, we give information, we help, we go into the dialogue. If we go into details, we charge for that. So then the municipality is free to decide at a certain point, and then we of course apply for a contract. And if we come second, yeah, that's the game.
Very good to hear your perspectives on that. Thank you. Okay, well, closing it with one last question for you, Lene, which was also quite popular in the Slido poll. You have about 2 to 3 minutes to answer it, but I think that'd be fine. It's a question about monitoring. How do you monitor the impact and the positive environmental impacts or social impacts? You were mentioning school kids before, of your NBS project, and maybe how do you use these monitoring results to make the case for further NBS projects?
Yeah, that's a difficult one. But how do you monitor what you're not able to actually put a quality on? Because there are no set of qualities that you can. So what we do is actually just when we're talking about biodiversity, for example, trying to measure that. If we're talking about a park, is it used more? A set of cameras that can tell us of the traffic in the park. For example, we have just renovated a large square at Frederiksberg where we have a cloud-based management project combined with a parking garage down underneath the surface, and also a big playground. And before it was a square that was, it was well used, but not that much used. And now it's a place where people come and sit and the kids run around, and there is a sopping basin and for the kids to play in and everything. And that gives us a value that this is well spoken of and it's well used, but what we don't have to put on it yet. So we're trying to figure out how do we actually measure that. Yeah, that's a hard one.
Like it's still work in progress, and I'm hoping some of the European pilots NBS can help, well, generate a bit of more knowledge about how to assess impacts. That might be the future for you as procurers. But thank you so much for that. I'm wondering whether you've got any last thing that we didn't cover during the conversation that you're burning to share on the topic, or if there's any last comments from the audience, please put them in the chat as well. But Hans, Lene, any last few things that you wanted to share that we didn't cover? We've got about 3 minutes left.
Just one comment. I think it's fantastic to be part of this new green economy, and there are still lots of questions, but especially, Lena, what you said, we will get there. I'm very sure that in a couple of years, you know what you can expect when you give the tender out and you measure that, and if the company is delivering, everything is fine. If not, they have to try better. We'll get there, and I think it's great being part of that new economy because it makes the world better, definitely.
Yeah, and for the private sector, just contact the public authorities, and if you have an idea, because we are really eager to try new things out and actually get there. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much for that, both of you. For everyone, I was going to share my slides as a closing for the session with a few resources that might be helpful for everyone. But given I've been having some issues and we don't have much time left, the slides will be shared with you after the event. At least I hope we can do that. As a little taster of what I've got there at resources, you will have some general resources on green public procurement and general definitions that could be helpful. A report on the public procurement of NBS that we produced last year, which provides some helpful case studies, whether you're a company or a public procurer, about the procurement of NBS and can help you dig more into the topic. For public buyers, there's also some very helpful information on the EU Green Public Procurement website with specific criteria that can be used when wanting to procure NBS, notably within road construction tenders or within public space maintenance tenders. So you will have some ready-made criteria allowing you to do that and include NBS within those tenders. And also there is some training material prepared by the European Innovation Council on public procurement for suppliers. So all the links are in my presentation, which you can't see now, but I'll share with you after the event. And hopefully that can help you dig a bit more onto the topic. So yeah, now it's time to wrap up. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending. And most of all, thank you, Hans and Lene, very much for your very helpful insights. I'm sure it was very helpful for people within the session. If people want to contact you, you can all pass through me. Again, my contact details will be in the presentation. And then I'll put you in touch with Hans or Lene, depending. And one last thing worth mentioning is that you get another chance to hear about the procurement of NBS in about half an hour, I think, in the next capacity building session, which is focusing on the Brazilian perspective and Brazilian nature-based enterprises trying to get into the public market for NBS. So I very much invite you to stay into the conference and join in half an hour to hear Brazilian news on the topic. So thank you so much, everyone. And I hope to see you in half an hour. Thanks, Lene. Thanks, Hans. Bye.
Bye.